Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, way back, to a place where winter wasn't just a season, it was an existential threat. A relentless, icy grip that squeezed the life out of everything. Imagine, if you will, the biting wind whipping across vast, snow-covered landscapes, the sun a mere rumor for weeks on end, and the gnawing certainty that every single calorie you consume is precious, hard-won, and likely, well, let's just say it's not coming from a freshly stocked supermarket aisle. You're a Viking, and survival isn't about thriving, it's about enduring. You're about to discover how these legendary Norsemen, in an age before refrigeration, before even a basic understanding of microbiology, managed to cheat starvation through months of brutal cold, relying on foods that would make your modern palate recoil in horror. Honestly, you probably wouldn't last a week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening, drop a comment with your location and local time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel it in your bones, don't you? That creeping chill, the kind that seeps through layers of wool and hide, settling deep within your marrow. The days have been shrinking, each one a little shorter, a little darker, until now. The sun barely kisses the horizon before retreating, leaving you in a perpetual twilight. Outside your longhouse, the world is a canvas of white and gray, painted with the stark silhouettes of bare trees and the occasional desperate cry of a raven. This isn't the romanticized Viking age of summer raids and glorious battles. This is the quiet, grinding reality of winter. A season that demands ingenuity, resilience, and a stomach for the truly unique. You close your eyes, the warmth of the porridge spreading through you. You are nourished by the sun-ripened berries, the sturdy roots, and the life-giving grains, all carefully gathered and stored by the hands of your ancestors. You sleep, knowing that the earth, even in its frozen slumber, continues to provide, thanks to the ancient wisdom of your people. Your breath plumes in the frigid air as you move about your daily tasks, each movement a deliberate effort against the cold. The fire in the hearth is your constant companion, its smoky warmth a precious commodity, but even its embrace can't fully banish the pervasive chill. You glance at the dwindling stores, the carefully hoarded provisions that represent your family's lifeline until spring. The fresh meat from the autumn hunt is long gone, consumed in the early, more forgiving days of winter. The last of the summer berries, once plump and vibrant, are a distant memory. Now, your diet is a testament to the harsh realities of the North, a culinary journey into the realm of the preserved, the fermented, and the astonishingly durable. The longhouse, your sanctuary against the biting cold, is filled with the familiar sense of dried fish, smoked meat, and aging cheese. Yet, there's another, more subtle aroma, one that underpins almost every aspect of Viking food preservation, the sharp, clean scent of salt. It is a resource so fundamental, so utterly vital to survival in this harsh northern climate, that it was often considered as valuable as gold. This chapter is about salt and its indispensable role in transforming perishable bounty into enduring sustenance. A story of a simple mineral that held the power of life and death. Think about it, no freezers, no canning jars, no chemical preservatives. Their methods were born of necessity, honed over centuries of trial and error, passed down through generations. They understood, instinctively, what we now know scientifically, that removing water, adding salt, fermenting, or smoking could transform perishable goods into staples that would last through the leanest months. You might wrinkle your nose at the thought of some of these dishes, but to a Viking, they were the difference between life and death. It's a stark reminder that hunger is the ultimate motivator, capable of making even the most unappetizing fare seem like a feast. You can almost hear your inner voice, accustomed to instant gratification, whimpering. Is there a drive-thru around here? Imagine the vast, restless sea, the source of so much of your people's wealth and sustenance. While fish and marine mammals provided the protein, it was the sea itself, through its salty embrace, that offered the ultimate preservative. You recall the arduous process of salt production, particularly for inland communities or those far from natural salt springs. It wasn't as simple as digging it out of the ground. It often involved boiling down seawater or collecting brine from salt marshes. a laborious and fuel-intensive task. The steam would rise in thick clouds, and the air would be heavy with the tang of the ocean, as precious salt crystals slowly formed in the bottom of large iron pans. The common historical fact you quickly grasp is the sheer brutality of the Scandinavian winter. It wasn't just cold, it was relentlessly cold, often for 6 months or more. Rivers and fjords froze solid, trapping ships and making travel perilous. Farmland lay dormant under a thick blanket of snow, and hunting became a desperate gamble, with animals either hibernating or migrating south. This forced the Vikings to become masters of resource management, planning their entire year around the need to stockpile enough provisions to survive the long, dark season. Their very existence hinged on their ability to transform the bounty of summer and autumn into a lasting legacy of sustenance. For coastal communities, the process might have been slightly easier, involving the collection of sea salt evaporated by the sun and wind in shallow pools, or the burning of seaweed to extract its mineral content. Regardless of the method, every grain of salt was hard-won, a testament to the ingenuity and perseverance required to secure this vital commodity. You can almost feel the sting of the salt on your hands, the ache in your back from tending the fires. Knowing that this white gold was your family's lifeline? You might think, I'd kill for a salt shaker right now. But then you'd remember that you'd probably have to kill for the salt itself. Now, for a unique detail, did you know that some Viking communities, especially those in more isolated or resource-scarce areas, would sometimes preserve birds whole, feathers and all, by burying them in a pit with fermented fish? This process, known as kiviak in some Arctic cultures, creates a highly concentrated, nutrient-rich food source, though the aroma is said to be unforgettable. Imagine digging up a feathery, pungent package in the dead of winter, knowing that this peculiar delicacy is what stands between you and starvation. It's a far cry from your Thanksgiving turkey, isn't it? The thought alone might make you appreciate your refrigerator just a little bit more. You can almost hear a modern food critic exclaiming, "The mouthfeel is challenging, but the umami notes are surprisingly robust." A common historical fact is that salt was not just a food preservative, but also a crucial commodity for trade across Europe during the Viking Age. Its importance meant that control over salt production or access to salt resources could confer significant economic and political power. Salted fish and meat were easily transportable and highly sought after, making salt an invisible yet powerful engine of Viking expansion and commerce. It was the original global currency. Long before coins became widespread, the academic debate still lingers around the precise role of certain food items in the Viking winter diet. For instance, historians still debate whether wild root vegetables and foraged greens played a significant role in preventing scurvy and other deficiency diseases during the long winter months, or if the preserved animal products, rich in certain vitamins, were sufficient. Was it a carefully balanced, if unappetizing, diet, or a desperate scramble for calories that often left them on the brink of nutritional collapse? You can almost picture scholarly Vikings in their longhouses, arguing over the merits of dried cod versus fermented shark, their debates just as fervent as any modern academic conference. For a unique detail, did you know that in some areas, particularly in Scandinavia, the Vikings might have used a method called ash salt production? This involved burning certain salt-rich plants, such as specific types of seaweed or marsh grasses, and then leaching the ashes with water to create a brine, which was then evaporated to yield salt crystals. This was an ingenious way to obtain salt in regions where direct sea salt evaporation was difficult due to climate, or where rock salt deposits were unavailable. Imagine the smoky, briny scent of the burning seaweed, a strange perfume of survival. It's like making your own seasoning from scratch, but with significantly more effort and smoke. As the days crawl by, marked only by the slow burning of the peat fire and the occasional blizzard howling outside, you find yourself acutely aware of the sounds of the longhouse, the low hum of conversations, the rhythmic creak of timbers, the rustle of straw bedding. Every now and then, the distinct, sharp crack of ice forming on the roof sends a shiver down your spine, a constant reminder of the world outside, your body, once accustomed to the varied flavors of fresh game and wild berries, now craves the dense, salty, and often chewy textures of preserved foods. It's a primal hunger, one that overrides any aesthetic preferences. You eat not for pleasure, but for fuel, for warmth, for the sheer stubborn will to see another sunrise. Academically, historians still debate the precise extent to which different Viking communities relied on locally produced salt versus imported salt. While archaeological evidence points to some local production, the scale of this production, and the reliance on trade networks for salt supply, varied significantly across the vast Viking world. Was every community self-sufficient in salt, or were some heavily dependent on long-distance trade routes for this essential mineral? You can almost hear the academic arguments. The evidence for local salt works is limited, but the need for salt was universal, so they must have had a method. It's a salty debate, indeed. You watch as your mother, her hands calloused and strong, meticulously prepares a meal. There's no fancy cooking here, no elaborate spices beyond what could be foraged or traded. It's about efficiency and maximizing every last scrap. The air fills with the faint, familiar scent of dried fish, a smell that has become synonymous with survival. You might recall the faint, almost metallic tang of the fish, drying racks from the autumn, a scent that permeated the very air of your village as the summer's catch was prepared for the coming hardship. That smell, once a promise of food, is now a constant companion, a reminder of the ingenuity that keeps you alive. The primary use of salt, and of course, why it wasn't curing. Meat and fish would be heavily salted, either by rubbing dry salt into the flesh or by immersing them in a concentrated brine solution. This process draws out moisture, creating an environment hostile to the bacteria that cause spoilage. The salt also penetrates the food, adding flavor and transforming its texture. You remember the large wooden tubs filled with brine, the fish floating in the murky, salty liquid, slowly undergoing their transformation. The air around these tubs would be intensely briny, almost stinging your eyes. The children, bundled in furs, play quietly by the fire, their laughter a fragile counterpoint to the harsh realities outside. You know that for them, winter is a time of stories and indoor games, a time when the world outside is a dangerous, forbidden playground. But even they understand the importance of the food stores, the hushed reverence with which the preserved provisions are handled. They've seen the lean faces of those who didn't prepare enough, the hollow eyes of hunger. It's a lesson learned early, etched into the very fabric of their existence. Winter is a test, and only the prepared will pass. You recall the autumn slaughter, a grim but necessary event. The meat, still warm, would be quickly cut and then immediately packed in layers of salt in large barrels. Every muscle, every fiber, had to be thoroughly coated, ensuring no part was left vulnerable to decay. The barrels would then be sealed and stored in cool, dark places, often underground cellars, where the consistent cold would further aid in preservation. This salted meat, dense and intensely flavorful, would be a staple throughout the winter. You find yourself thinking about the sheer effort involved in preparing these foods. It wasn't just a matter of hanging a fish to dry. It was a communal endeavor, a monumental task that consumed weeks, sometimes months, of the warmer seasons. Every member of the family, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, had a role to play. The women would meticulously clean and salt the fish. The men would construct the drying racks or dig the storage pits. It was a dance of survival, choreographed by the seasons, each step essential to the next. You can almost feel the ache in your own hands, the sting of the salt on your skin, the exhaustion that comes from working from dawn till dusk, knowing that your future depends on your diligence. Fish, too, benefited immensely from salting. After being gutted and cleaned, fish would be layered with generous amounts of salt in barrels. This wet salting method was particularly effective for fattier fish that might not dry well, or for large quantities that needed quick preservation. The resulting salted fish, often rehydrated and cooked in stews or porridges, provided a crucial source of protein and essential fats. You'd break off a piece, its texture firm and resilient, and taste the deep, pervasive saltiness. A flavor that spoke of enduring through the lean times. The concept of fresh food during winter is almost alien to you now. The occasional rabbit snared, or a desperate fishing trip through a hole in the ice, provides a fleeting taste of something different. But these are rare luxuries, not staples. Your body has adapted, your palate has recalibrated, The strong, pungent flavors of fermented and dried foods, once perhaps an acquired taste, are now simply the taste of life. You've learned to appreciate the dense chewiness of dried meat, the tangy bite of preserved dairy. It's a culinary journey you never asked for, but one you've embraced with the fierce determination of a survivor. The importance of salt went beyond just food. It was also used in the preservation of hides and furs, crucial for clothing, shelter, and trade. Salted hides would be less prone to decay, allowing them to be stored and processed later, ensuring that no part of a hunted animal went to waste. It was a multi-purpose mineral, a true cornerstone of Viking survival. You might even joke. Salt is not just for seasoning your fermented shark anymore. As the long night descends once more, you pull your furs tighter, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls of the longhouse. The wind howls outside, a mournful lament that echoes the emptiness of the landscape. But inside, there is a quiet resilience, a shared understanding that you are all in this together. The preserved foods, humble and unglamorous as they may be, are your shield against the relentless onslaught of winter. They are the silent heroes of your survival story, allowing you to dream of spring, of green fields, and of the return of the sun. You close your eyes, the scent of smoke and dried fish a comforting lullaby, and drift off, knowing that for tonight you have endured. You think about the sheer logistical challenge of acquiring and transporting enough salt. For communities far from the coast or salt springs, this would have involved long journeys, arduous labor, and careful planning. Salt was a precious commodity, often traded for other goods, and its scarcity in some regions would have driven innovation in alternative preservation methods or increased reliance on other forms of trade. You wake to the familiar bite of cold and the howl of the wind outside. But today, there's a different scent mingling in the air, one you've learned to recognize even if it's far from pleasant. It's the smell of fermented fish, one of the Vikings' greatest secrets against the winter's hunger. You might wrinkle your nose, perhaps even feel a slight lurch in your stomach. But you know that this food, however peculiar, is a vital lifeline. The very taste of salt became synonymous with life during the winter. When fresh food was scarce, the intense saltiness of cured meats and fish provided a powerful flavor, a reminder of the energy and nutrients contained within. It was a taste that cut through the monotony of the winter diet, a sharp, invigorating sensation that helped to keep your spirits up. Imagine yourself standing in a dimly lit, damp cellar, where large wooden barrels filled with fish are undergoing a miraculous, or perhaps horrifying, depending on your perspective, transformation. The fish isn't cooked or fully dried. Instead, it's left to cure in an anaerobic environment, often within wooden barrels or stone-lined pits. This isn't just a preservation method, it's an art, an intuitive understanding of microbiology that the Vikings achieved through millennia of trial and error. Even though they had no concept of bacteria, the constant presence of salt, whether in the air of the curing rooms or on your hands after handling preserved foods, was a subtle but pervasive reminder of its importance. It was a silent partner in your survival, working tirelessly to hold back the forces of decay. You could almost feel its microscopic power, drawing out moisture, inhibiting growth, standing guard over your precious food stores. You recall the frantic days of the autumn fish harvest, when the boats returned laden with cod, herring, and salmon from the frigid seas. It was a time of bustling activity, when everyone worked tirelessly to prepare for the coming winter. A large portion of the catch would be meticulously dried on vast outdoor racks, exposed to the sun and sea winds. But another significant portion, especially the fattier fish, would be set aside for the fermentation process. You can almost see the elders, their hands calloused and wise, carefully cleaning the fish, removing the guts and sometimes the heads, before layering them into the barrels. As the long winter nights stretch on, you find comfort in the knowledge that your ancestors mastered the art of salt preservation. It's a simple chemical, yet its impact on their ability to thrive in such a challenging environment was profound. It allowed them to store the bounty of the warmer months, ensuring that even when the world outside was frozen and barren, your longhouse remained a haven of sustenance. This fermentation isn't simply about letting the fish rot. It's a controlled process, where naturally occurring bacteria present in the fish, and the surrounding environment begin to break down proteins and fats, creating new compounds. This not only preserves the fish, but also enhances its nutritional value, making certain vitamins and minerals more bioavailable. It also imparts an incredibly pungent, sour, and sometimes ammoniac aroma and flavor, a taste that you, as a Viking, have been accustomed to since childhood. You might think, surely something has gone terribly wrong here. But to them, it's the smell of survival. You close your eyes, the faint, clean scent of salt lingering in the air. You are sustained by the wisdom of your people, by their understanding of the earth's bounty and the sea's gifts. Salt, humble yet mighty, is a testament to their enduring spirit. You drift off to sleep, knowing that this precious mineral, won through labor and ingenuity, continues to guard you through the long, dark winter. A common historical fact about the Vikings is their prowess as sailors and explorers. But what's less commonly known is how crucial their food preservation capabilities were to their long-distance voyages. Fermented fish, alongside dried fish, provided a dense source of protein and energy, requiring no cooking and being easily transportable. This allowed them to cross vast oceans, discover new lands, and establish far-flung settlements, from Greenland to North America. You can picture a Viking sailor chewing on a piece of fermented fish on a storm-tossed deck, thinking, at least this can't get any worse than the weather. The winter deepens, and the longhouse becomes even more of a refuge, a world unto itself. You've seen how the Vikings preserved their food, transforming perishable bounty into durable sustenance. But what did a daily meal actually look like during these lean months? It wasn't a feast, certainly not in the modern sense, but a carefully constructed assembly of preserved ingredients, designed not for culinary delight, but for pure, unadulterated survival. This is a glimpse into the Viking winter meal, a testament to efficiency and endurance. For a unique detail, did you know that some Viking communities, particularly those in more isolated or resource-scarce areas, might have used specific types of plants or herbs within their fermentation pits to influence the process and perhaps impart distinct flavors? While concrete archaeological evidence for widespread flavoring of fermented fish is scarce, researchers have found traces of certain botanicals in Viking settlements that could have served such a purpose. This suggests that even in the most extreme conditions, Vikings attempted to add a touch of gourmet to their meals, if only to mask the truly horrifying smell, you might wonder. Did they have a Michelin-starred chef specializing in this? Imagine the scene at mealtime. There's no grand dining table, no individual plates. Instead, a large wooden trough or a communal pot sits over the central hearth, its contents simmering gently, filling the longhouse with a warm, if sometimes pungent, aroma. You gather with your family and the other inhabitants of the longhouse, sitting on benches around the fire, the flickering light casting long shadows on the walls. The atmosphere is one of quiet purpose, a shared understanding of the importance of this moment. Every calorie counts. The careful management of these plant resources speaks volumes about the Vikings' foresight and planning. They understood that survival wasn't about a single big hunt or a massive fishing expedition. It was about consistent, meticulous effort throughout the year, ensuring that every possible food source was harvested and preserved. It was a testament to their adaptability, their ability to thrive in a harsh environment by understanding and working with the natural world. A typical winter meal would often revolve around a hearty porridge or stew. This wasn't the sweet, creamy porridge you might imagine. It was a savory, thick concoction made from the stored grains barley or oats, often mixed with rehydrated dried fish or small pieces of salted meat. The dried fish, must remember, was rock hard, so it would be soaked overnight or pounded to soften before being added to the pot. The salted meat, too, would need careful preparation to leach out some of its intense saltiness. You can almost hear the rhythmic thud of the pounding mallet, a familiar sound of winter meal preparation. You might think, this sounds like something you'd eat on a survival show. And you'd be absolutely right. Academically, historians still debate whether the Viking methods of fish fermentation were as tightly controlled as our modern understanding of the process, or if they were simply a fortunate accident based on empirical observation. Did they develop a nuanced understanding of the conditions required to produce a safe and nutritious product? Or did they simply eat what didn't kill them? You can imagine a lively debate among Viking scholars, one side asserting, It's science, and the other retorting. No, it's desperation. A common historical fact is that Viking meals were often single-pot affairs, designed for efficiency and maximum caloric output. Ingredients would be thrown together and simmered for hours, allowing flavors to meld and tough preserved foods to become more palatable. This communal cooking style also fostered a sense of togetherness and shared hardship, reinforcing the strong social bonds within the longhouse. It was the original slow cooker, fueled by necessity. You settle down by the hearth, watching your mother carefully retrieve a piece of fermented fish from the barrel. The pungent aroma permeates the room, but no one complains. This is your meal. You chew slowly, feeling the soft yet chewy texture, the sharp, salty tang spreading across your tongue. It's not delicious, but it provides energy, and that's all that matters. You know that each bite is a small victory against the brutal winter. For a unique detail, did you know that Vikings often ate with their hands, using knives to cut larger pieces of meat or fish? Spoons might have been used for porridge or stews, but forks were largely unknown. Meals were a practical affair, focused on getting sustenance into the body with minimal fuss. Imagine the communal pot, everyone reaching in, a true family-style meal in the most literal sense. It's like a very rustic potluck, where everyone brought their most durable preserved food. You remember the story of a neighbor, a mighty warrior who succumbed to starvation during a particularly harsh winter? His death wasn't from battle, but from deprivation. That lesson is etched into your mind. Preparation is key. And fermented fish, smelling like the underworld, is an indispensable part of that preparation. You silently think, if I can survive this smell, I can survive anything. Academically, historians still debate the precise frequency of meals during the Viking winter. While some sources suggest 2 main meals a day, morning and evening, others propose that food might have been consumed more opportunistically, with individuals snacking on dried provisions throughout the day as needed for energy. Was there a strict meal schedule, or was it a more flexible approach dictated by hunger and available resources? You can almost hear the academic arguments, but the sagas mention specific meal times. But archaeological evidence shows varied activity patterns. It's a debate about the daily grind. The fermentation process wasn't exclusively applied to fish. Some archaeological evidence suggests that Vikings may have also fermented meats, particularly lamb or beef, though less commonly than fish. This process often involved salting the meat and then allowing it to cure in a cool, damp environment, encouraging the growth of lactic acid bacteria. This created a distinctively flavored meat, often eaten raw or lightly cooked. You can envision thin slices of fermented meat being served as a special appetizer at a Viking feast. Alongside the porridge or stew, you'd have pieces of hard, dry flatbread made from barley or oat flour. This bread wasn't light and airy, it was dense and chewy, designed to be filling and to last. You'd break off a piece, perhaps using it to scoop up some of the stew, or simply gnawing on it to provide a solid base for your meal. Sometimes, if you were lucky, there might be a small lump of bog butter or a sliver of aged cheese to spread on the bread, adding a much-needed boost of fat and flavor. Fermented shark, or haycarl as it's known in modern Iceland, is a prime example of the Viking adaptation to their harsh environment. The Greenland shark, a creature of the frigid waters, has flesh that contains trimethylamine oxide, a toxin that can cause intoxication and discomfort if eaten fresh. However, the lengthy fermentation and drying process breaks down this toxin, rendering it a safe and highly nutritious protein source. This stands as a testament to the Vikings' tenacity and empirical knowledge, turning a potential danger into a source of sustenance. Drinks would typically be water, or perhaps ale if supplies were plentiful and brewing had been done in the autumn. Mead, the fermented honey drink, was more of a celebratory beverage, reserved for special occasions or feasts, not for daily sustenance during the lean winter months. You'd drink deeply, feeling the cold water refresh your throat, a simple pleasure in a world of hard necessities. You can feel the warmth spreading through your stomach as the food begins to digest. It's a sense of relief, an affirmation that you've made it through another day. The stories of lean winters, of families struggling to find food, are a constant reminder of the importance of preservation. You are grateful for those who came before you, who discovered these methods, passing them down to your generation. You remember the feeling of your stomach, grumbling persistently in the early days of winter, slowly adapting to the smaller portions and the tougher textures. Hunger was a constant companion, a dull ache that only truly subsided after a hot, filling bowl of porridge. You learned to eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that this meal had to sustain you for many hours of cold and labor. It was a lesson in mindful eating, born of scarcity. In the deepening gloom of the winter night, you hear the steady breathing of others in the longhouse. The smell of fermented fish still lingers, but it has become part of the air, a familiar and comforting scent. You think of the Vikings who came before you, who endured countless cold winters thanks to their ingenuity and courage. They didn't have modern conveniences, but they had a deep understanding of the natural world and the ability to turn what was available into a means of survival. The children, though often restless, understood the solemnity of mealtime. They ate what was given without complaint, knowing that every morsel was precious. Their small hands would carefully pick at pieces of dried fish, their eyes wide with the understanding that this was their lifeline. You'd sometimes share a particularly chewy piece of stockfish with a younger sibling, a small act of generosity in a world that demanded self-reliance. You wonder how many times a Viking might have experimented with a new preservation method, only to find it ineffective, or worse, sickening. There must have been countless trials and errors, hard-won lessons paid for with the price of life. But eventually, they figured out what worked, and those methods became their legacy, allowing them to not just survive, but thrive in an environment that many other civilizations would deem uninhabitable. You can imagine a Viking trying a new dish and saying, didn't die this time. Success. The preparation of these meals was a continuous process. While the main cooking happened over the hearth, the soaking of dried foods, the grinding of grains, and the breaking down of tough preserved meats would occupy much of the day. It was a cycle of labor, ensuring that when hunger struck, sustenance was ready, even if it required some effort to consume. You can almost feel the calluses on your hands from the constant work. Fermented fish isn't just food, it's a symbol of resilience. It represents humanity's ability to adapt, to find solutions in the most challenging circumstances. It's a reminder that sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. Developed over centuries of experience and an instinctive understanding of the natural world, the social aspect of the meal was subtle but profound. Sitting together, sharing the same food from the same pot, reinforced the bonds of family and community. It was a quiet act of solidarity, a shared experience of enduring the winter together. The low murmur of conversation, the occasional shared glance, the warmth of bodies pressed close in the firelight. These were as nourishing as the food itself. You close your eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire and the howl of the wind outside. You feel safe in the warmth of the longhouse, enveloped by the scent of smoke and fermented fish. It's the smell of life, the smell of existence, the smell of an ancient legacy that still echoes today. You drift off to sleep, knowing that tomorrow you will face the winter again. But you will face it with a full belly and an unyielding spirit. As the winter nights grew longer, the meals became more than just sustenance. They were moments of quiet reflection. You'd look at the faces around the fire, seeing the lines of fatigue, but also the unwavering determination. Each person was a link in the chain of survival, and each meal was a reaffirmation of that collective strength. The pungent aroma of fermented fish still lingers faintly in your nostrils, a constant reminder of the depths of Viking ingenuity. But as the days continue to shorten and the cold intensify, you realize that one method alone cannot sustain an entire community. Your gaze drifts towards the ceiling of the longhouse, where rows upon rows of dried fish, stiff and board-like, hang alongside strips of dark, leathery meat. This is the realm of wind and fire, the silent, tireless guardians of your winter larder. You reach for another piece of flatbread, its dry texture a familiar comfort. You chew slowly, the flavors of grain and smoke and salt mingling in your mouth. It's not a meal for pleasure, but for purpose. It fuels your body, keeps the cold at bay, and allows you to dream of the spring, when fresh greens and plump game will once again grace your table. Think about the sheer simplicity, yet profound effectiveness, of drying and smoking. Before the age of complex machinery, before the understanding of bacterial growth, The Vikings harnessed the most fundamental forces of nature, the relentless wind and the transformative power of smoke. You can almost feel the dry, cold air of the autumn, perfectly suited for stripping moisture from the fish and meat, leaving behind only the concentrated essence of sustenance. It's a natural alchemy, turning perishable flesh into durable, apportable, and incredibly nutrient-dense provisions. The Viking winter meal was a masterclass in efficiency and adaptation. It demonstrated their ability to make the most of limited resources, to transform the bounty of summer into a lifeline for winter. It was a diet born of necessity, but one that sustained a powerful and enduring people through centuries of harsh northern winters. You recall the late summer and early autumn, a time of intense activity outside the longhouse. The air would be thick with the scent of wood smoke and the briny tang of the sea. Massive wooden racks, sometimes stretching for hundreds of feet, would be erected along the coastline or near the rivers. These weren't just simple clotheslines, they were sophisticated structures designed to maximize airflow and exposure to the elements. You'd see thousands upon thousands of fish, split open and laid flat, hanging like strange silvery banners, shimmering in the pale Nordic sun. The wind, a constant companion in these northern lands, would whistle through the racks, patiently drawing out every last drop of moisture. You close your eyes, the warmth of the longhouse fire a gentle embrace. You are full, not with indulgence, but with the quiet satisfaction of survival. The tastes and textures of the preserved foods linger on your tongue, a testament to the ingenuity of your ancestors. You drift off to sleep, knowing that the Viking winter meal in all its humble practicality has seen you through another day. This process, known as stockfish production, was a cornerstone of the Viking economy and diet, especially for communities in Norway and Iceland. Cod, particularly, was ideal for drying due to its lean, white flesh. It would become so hard and dry that you could literally use it as a weapon, or more practically, break it into pieces and chew on it for hours, slowly releasing its protein and nutrients. It's the original protein bar, but with significantly more chewing required. You might think, my jaw hurts just thinking about it. But to a Viking, that jaw ache was the sweet pain of survival. The longhouse, though a haven from the relentless winter, is more than just a shelter for your body. It's the beating heart of your community, and food, in its preserved, unglamorous forms, is the very blood that flows through its veins. You've seen the sheer practicality of Viking food preservation, but now consider its profound social significance. Food wasn't merely fuel, it was a powerful social glue, a symbol of status, a tool for diplomacy, and a cornerstone of communal life. A common historical fact is that dried fish, particularly stockfish, was a major trade commodity for the Vikings. It was lightweight, non-perishable, and packed with protein, making it an ideal provision for long voyages and a valuable item for exchange across Europe. You can imagine a Viking trader far from home, proudly displaying his bundles of dried cod, knowing that this humble foodstuff was as good as gold in many distant lands. It was their equivalent of a universally accepted currency, a testament to its enduring value. Imagine a feast, even a modest one, during the depths of winter. The longhouse, usually a place of quiet industry, transforms. The central fire roars, casting a warm, inviting glow. The air, typically heavy with the scent of smoke and dried provisions, is now enriched with the aroma of a special stew, perhaps made with a precious cut of smoked meat or a rare, foraged root. This isn't just about eating, it's about sharing, about reinforcing the bonds that hold your community together. You might think, this is like a potluck, but with higher stakes. And you'd be absolutely right. For a unique detail, did you know that the best stockfish was often left to dry for several months? Sometimes even up to a year, exposed to the elements but protected from rain. The optimal conditions involved cold, dry air and a consistent breeze, allowing the fish to slowly dehydrate without spoiling. This slow drying process also contributed to the unique flavor and texture of the finished product. Imagine the patience required, knowing that your winter survival depended on the whims of the weather, hoping for just the right amount of wind and sun. It's like waiting for a very, very slow-motion delivery from Amazon. A common historical fact is that hospitality was a deeply ingrained value in Viking society. Offering food and drink to travelers, even strangers, was a sacred duty, reflecting not only generosity but also the host's status and wealth. A well-stocked larder, filled with a variety of preserved foods, was a clear sign of a prosperous household and a capable leader. You can imagine a chieftain proudly displaying his stores of aged cheese and smoked hams, knowing that each barrel and hanging slab represented his ability to provide for his people. Academically, historians still debate the exact methods and scale of meat smoking among the Vikings. While fish drying is well documented, the extent to which various meats like beef, pork, or game were systematically smoked for long-term preservation, beyond simple curing, remains a subject of ongoing research. Was it a widespread practice, or more localized to specific regions or social classes? You can almost hear the academic arguments, but the smokehouses were too small. But they could have used portable smoking pits. It's a culinary mystery wrapped in an archaeological enigma. For a unique detail, did you know that certain types of preserved foods might have been considered prestige items, reserved for special occasions or for gifts to important guests? For example, particularly well-aged or rare types of dried fish, or perhaps exceptionally rich bog butter, could have been seen as delicacies. These weren't just about calories, they were about flavor, texture, and the sheer effort involved in their creation and preservation. Imagine presenting a guest with a piece of perfectly cured meat, saying, "This isn't just sustenance, it's a statement." It's like bringing a vintage bottle of wine to a dinner party. But instead of wine, it's really old fish, beyond drying. Smoking added another layer of preservation and flavor. You'd see the smokehouses, small, enclosed structures where meat, and sometimes fish, would hang over smoldering fires. The smoke, rich with compounds from various woods like birch or alder, would permeate the flesh, creating a protective barrier against spoilage and imparting a deep, savory taste. This wasn't just about drying, it was about infusing, transforming the raw material into something entirely new, something that could withstand the passage of time. The smoky aroma, a comforting presence in the longhouse, reminds you of the tireless efforts of your ancestors. Academically, historians still debate the precise role of specialized food preparation and distribution in establishing and maintaining social hierarchies within Viking communities. While chieftains clearly had more access to resources, the extent to which they controlled the production and rationing of preserved foods for the broader population is less clear. Was food distribution a top-down system, or was it more decentralized, with individual households managing their own stores? You can almost hear the academic arguments. The sagas describe feasts hosted by powerful jarls. Yes, but archaeological evidence shows widespread household-level storage. It's a debate about who held the keys to the pantry. You remember watching your father, his face streaked with soot, tending the fires in the smokehouse? He'd carefully select the wood, ensuring a slow, steady burn that produced thick, cool smoke, not searing heat. It was a delicate balance, a dance between fire and flesh, where too much heat would cook the meat, and too little smoke would leave it vulnerable. He'd check the meat daily, feeling its texture, assessing its color, his experienced eyes reading the subtle signs of proper preservation. It was a skill passed down through generations, a silent language spoken between man and nature. The smoked meat, often from pigs or cattle slaughtered in the autumn, would be a welcome addition to the winter diet. While dried fish provided lean protein, smoked meat offered a richer, fattier alternative, crucial for providing energy in the extreme cold. You'd gnaw on a piece, feeling the resistance of the tough fibers, the burst of smoky flavor as you chewed. It wasn't a tender steak, but it was sustenance, a taste of the autumn bounty carried through the winter. You might even find yourself wishing for a little BBQ sauce, but then you remember where you are. The portability of these dried and smoked foods was a game changer. Imagine a raiding party, setting off in their longships across the choppy seas. They couldn't carry fresh provisions for weeks on end, but with bundles of stockfish and smoked meat, they had a compact, lightweight, and highly nutritious food source that could sustain them on their daring voyages. It allowed them to extend their reach, to venture further than any before them, fueled by the very essence of their preserved harvest. It's the ultimate grab-and-go meal. Viking style. You remember the communal feasts after a successful autumn hunt or a profitable trading voyage. Even though the fresh meat was soon gone, the preserved bounty would last. The long tables would groan under the weight of platters piled high with rehydrated dried fish, chunks of salted meat, thick slices of cheese, and bowls of berry paste. The atmosphere would be boisterous, filled with laughter, storytelling, and the clatter of eating utensils. It was a moment of collective celebration, a temporary reprieve from the constant struggle against the elements. You think about the sheer volume of food that had to be prepared. It wasn't just enough for your immediate family. It was enough for the entire longhouse, for the community, and for any unexpected guests or travelers who might seek shelter. The collective effort was immense, a testament to the strong communal bonds that defined Viking society. Everyone had a role, from the children gathering firewood to the women preparing the fish and meat, to the men building and maintaining the drying racks and smokehouses. It was a symphony of survival, each instrument playing its part. The distribution of food within the longhouse was often a communal affair, particularly during the leanest months. While each family had its own stores, there was an unspoken understanding that no one would starve if others had plenty. The sharing of resources, especially in times of extreme hardship, was a fundamental aspect of their survival strategy. You'd see a neighbor quietly offering a piece of their dried fish to a family whose stores were running low, a gesture of solidarity that spoke volumes without a single word. As the winter drags on and you find yourself appreciating the subtle differences in the preserved foods, the almost translucent quality of the dried fish, the deep mahogany hue of the smoked meat. Each piece tells a story of the sun, the wind, and the fire that transformed it. You learn to recognize the best cuts, the ones that will provide the most sustenance, the ones that will last the longest. It's a knowledge born of necessity, honed by the relentless pressure of survival. The preparation of food, even the monotonous winter meals, was often a shared activity. Women would gather around the hearth, grinding grain, soaking dried fish, and preparing the communal pot. This shared labor fostered camaraderie and allowed for the exchange of knowledge and techniques. You'd learn new ways to rehydrate stockfish, or to make a particularly flavorful porridge. Lessons passed down through generations, strengthening the collective wisdom of the community. The crackle of the fire in the hearth is a constant, reassuring sound, a counterpoint to the howling wind outside. You watch the flames dance, remembering the larger fires that once smoked the meat, the smaller, controlled burns that dried the fish. Fire, in its many forms, was not just for warmth. It was a partner in preservation, a silent ally against the encroaching hunger. It's a primal connection, a bond between humanity and the elements that has existed since the dawn of time. You think about the role of food in ritual and belief. While not explicitly part of daily sustenance, certain preserved foods might have been used in offerings to the gods or spirits, particularly during the darkest days of winter, to ensure a bountiful spring harvest. The act of giving back a portion of their hard-won provisions was a way of honoring the forces that sustained them, a plea for continued favor. It's like leaving cookies out for Santa, but with more serious consequences if you forget. You reach for a piece of dried fish, breaking off a shard with a satisfying snap. You place it in your mouth, letting it soften slightly before you begin to chew. It's tough, requiring effort, but the salty, savory flavor slowly releases, a burst of energy for your weary body. This isn't a meal to be rushed, it's a slow release of sustenance, a deliberate act of survival. You might even find yourself humming a quiet tune as you chew, a personal anthem of endurance. The social hierarchy was often reflected in the quality and quantity of food consumed. While everyone ate preserved foods, a chieftain's family might have access to more varied or higher quality cuts of smoked meat, or larger quantities of imported grains. These subtle differences reinforced their position at the top of the social ladder, demonstrating their ability to command resources and provide for their dependents. The days are short, the nights long, but the presence of these carefully preserved foods provides a profound sense of security. You know that as long as these stores hold out, you will endure. The dried fish and smoked meat, humble as they are, represent the triumph of human ingenuity over the harsh realities of nature. They are the silent, enduring proof of the Vikings' ability to not just live, but to thrive, in a world that demanded nothing less than absolute resilience. As the winter drags on, the shared meals become even more significant. They are not just about filling your stomach. They are about maintaining morale, about reminding everyone that they are part of something larger than themselves. The warmth of the fire, the comfort of shared food, the quiet presence of your community. These are the intangible ingredients that make survival possible. You close your eyes. The rhythmic sound of your chewing a quiet meditation. The scent of smoke. A memory of warmth and effort fills your senses. You are a Viking, and you are surviving. You are fueled by the wind and the fire, by the ancient wisdom passed down through generations. And as you drift off to sleep, you know that the sun will eventually return. But until then, these preserved foods are your steadfast companions, guarding you through the long, dark winter. You reach for a piece of hard cheese, its familiar tang a comforting presence in your mouth. You look around the longhouse at the faces illuminated by the firelight. You see your family, your neighbors, your friends. You are all bound together by the shared experience of this winter, by the collective effort of preparing and consuming these preserved foods as the winter deepens, and the stores of dried fish and smoked meat become increasingly precious. Your attention turns to another vital source of sustenance, the products of your livestock. While the cattle and sheep that survived the autumn culling are now sheltered in their pens, their primary contribution during these lean months isn't fresh meat, but the rich, life-sustaining bounty of milk. And it's not just the milk itself, but the ingenious ways the Vikings transformed it into long-lasting, nutrient-dense foods, butter and cheese. The act of eating in the Viking winter was a profound social statement. It was a declaration of resilience, a reaffirmation of community, and a testament to the enduring power of human connection in the face of overwhelming adversity. The seemingly simple act of sharing a meal became a complex tapestry of social interaction, status, and collective survival. Imagine the daily ritual, even in the biting cold, of milking the cows and goats. It's a task that requires patience and a gentle hand. Your breath misting in the frigid air of the byre. The milk, warm and frothy, is a fleeting luxury in its fresh form. It won't last long, not without the magic of preservation. But the Vikings, with their innate understanding of natural processes, knew how to capture that fleeting goodness and lock it away for the long winter ahead. You close your eyes, the warmth of the communal fire a gentle embrace. You are sustained not just by the food, but by the bonds of your people, by the shared strength that flows through the longhouse. You drift off to sleep, knowing that in the Viking world, food was truly the glue that held society together, even through the long, dark winter. The transformation begins almost immediately. The fresh milk is carefully strained, then often left to sour naturally in wooden vessels. This initial souring is a crucial step, allowing beneficial bacteria to begin their work, converting lactose into lactic acid. This not only acts as a natural preservative, but also sets the stage for the creation of butter and cheese. You can almost smell the faint, tangy aroma of fermenting milk, a smell that signals the promise of future meals. The relentless cold and the monotonous diet of preserved foods take their toll, even on the hardy Viking body. You feel it in the subtle aches of your joints, the occasional weariness that lingers despite a full night's sleep, and the persistent craving for something fresh, something green. This chapter explores the health challenges faced by Vikings during winter, and the remarkable ways their bodies and knowledge adapted to survive on a diet that would send a modern nutritionist into a panic. Making butter was a laborious but essential process. You'd see the women of the longhouse, their arms strong and tireless, churning milk in tall wooden churns. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud of the churn staff would echo through the longhouse, a steady beat accompanying the quiet conversations and the crackle of the fire. As the cream separated and solidified, transforming from liquid to a rich, golden mass, you'd feel a sense of satisfaction. This butter, packed into wooden barrels or wrapped in cloth, could be stored for months, even years, in cool, dark conditions, providing vital fats and calories throughout the winter. It was the Viking equivalent of a high-energy spread, perfect for smearing on hard bread or adding richness to a meager stew. You might think, that's a lot of arm work for a pat of butter. But every ounce was worth its weight in gold. Imagine the subtle signs of winter's grip on your physical well-being. The lack of sunlight, for instance, means less vitamin D, a crucial nutrient for bone health and immune function. While you don't understand the science, you feel the difference, a slight dullness in your mood. perhaps a greater susceptibility to the sniffles that inevitably circulate through the close confines of the longhouse. You might think, I could really use some sunshine and a multivitamin. But alas, neither is on the menu. A common historical fact is that dairy farming was incredibly important to Viking society. Not just for milk, but for meat, hides, and even horn. Cows, goats, and sheep were carefully managed, with a significant portion of the herd culled in the autumn to conserve feed for the breeding stock that would survive the winter. This strategic management of livestock was fundamental to their long-term survival in a challenging environment. You can picture the careful calculations, the tough decisions made each autumn about which animals would live and which would provide sustenance for the winter. A common historical fact is that scurvy, caused by a severe deficiency of vitamin C, was a significant threat to populations, especially during long winters or voyages where fresh fruits and vegetables were unavailable. While the Viking diet of preserved meats and fish was rich in protein and fat, it often lacked the fresh plant matter necessary to prevent this debilitating disease. The symptoms fatigue, swollen gums, joint pain, and eventually death would have been a terrifying reality. For a unique detail, did you know that some Viking communities would bury their butter in peat bogs? This practice, known as bog butter, has been found in archaeological sites across northern Europe, with some samples dating back thousands of years. The anaerobic, acidic, and cool conditions of the bog acted as a natural refrigerator, preserving the butter for incredibly long periods, sometimes developing a distinct, pungent flavor. Imagine digging up a lump of ancient butter, knowing it was buried by your ancestors centuries ago, a true time capsule of sustenance. It's like finding a vintage cheese in your backyard, only much, much older and peatier. For a unique detail, did you know that some historians believe the Vikings may have unknowingly combated scurvy through the consumption of certain less preserved or quickly consumed animal organs? For instance, fresh liver from a recently hunted animal, or even the adrenal glands, are surprisingly rich in vitamin C. While not a long-term solution, these opportunistic sources could have provided crucial, albeit sporadic, boosts of the vital nutrient. Imagine the desperate delight of a fresh liver, knowing it might keep the dreaded scurvy at bay. It's like finding a hidden packet of emergency vitamins in a very unexpected place. Academically, historians still debate the exact methods and consistency of cheese production across different Viking regions. While it's clear cheese was made, the specific types, textures, and aging processes likely varied significantly depending on local traditions, available rennet sources, and storage conditions. Was there a standard Viking cheese, or was it a diverse array of regional specialties, each with its own unique characteristics? You can almost hear the academic arguments. My evidence suggests a hard, aged cheese. No, mine points to a softer, fresher curd. It's a delicious debate. If a bit academically, but historians still debate the precise prevalence and impact of specific deficiency diseases, like scurvy, within different Viking communities. While skeletal remains can show signs of chronic malnutrition, it's challenging to pinpoint the exact cause or the extent to which it affected the general population versus specific groups, e.g., those on long voyages. Was scurvy a constant, widespread threat, or more of an occasional, localized problem? You can almost hear the academic arguments. The bone lesions indicate chronic deficiency. Yes, but the overall health of the population seems robust. It's a debate about the hidden costs of survival. Cheese, perhaps even more than butter, was a marvel of preservation. The curds, separated from the whey after the milk had soured or rennet was added, would be pressed to remove excess moisture. Then, often, they would be salted and left to age. The longer the cheese aged, the harder and more durable it became, making it an excellent long-term food source. These hard cheeses, dense with protein and fat, were perfect for travel and for providing sustained energy during the long winter months. You'd break off a piece, its texture firm and crumbly, and savor its rich, tangy flavor. It was a taste of summer's bounty, miraculously preserved. Beyond scurvy, the sheer monotony of the winter diet could lead to other issues. While the preserved foods were calorically dense, they lacked the variety and fresh enzymes found in a summer diet. Digestive issues, from constipation to general discomfort, would have been common. Your body, accustomed to the seasonal fluctuations of fresh food, now had to process the same tough, salty, and often fermented fare day after day. It was a test of your digestive fortitude. You remember the distinct smell of the cheese room, a cool, dark corner of the longhouse or a separate cellar where rounds of cheese rested on wooden shelves. The air would be thick with the aroma of aging dairy, a complex blend of earthy, nutty, and sometimes sharp notes. It was a living food, constantly changing, constantly developing its character. You'd see the older women periodically turning the cheeses, brushing off any unwanted mold, ensuring proper air circulation. It was a labor of love, a dedication to preserving every last calorie. You remember the elder women, with their deep knowledge of herbs and remedies, preparing infusions from dried berries or bark, hoping to alleviate common ailments. They might offer you a bitter tea made from willow bark for aches and pains, or a concoction of dried nettles for digestive woes. These were not cures, but attempts to ease the discomfort, to help the body cope with the stresses of winter. Their wisdom, passed down through generations, was as vital as the preserved food itself. The whey, the liquid byproduct of cheese making, wasn't wasted either. It was often used as a drink, a source of nutrients, or even fed to livestock. Sometimes it would be boiled down to create a concentrated, nutrient-rich syrup, a kind of primitive protein supplement. The Vikings were masters of resourcefulness, ensuring that every part of their harvest, every drop of milk, was utilized to its fullest potential. Nothing was discarded if it could contribute to survival. You might think, they really knew how to squeeze every last drop out of life. And you'd be right. The cold itself was a constant drain on your body's energy. Maintaining core body temperature required a significant caloric intake, meaning that even a full belly of preserved food was quickly metabolized to generate warmth. This constant battle against hypothermia meant that every meal was a strategic maneuver, designed to provide the maximum amount of energy to keep your internal furnace burning. You'd feel the warmth spread through your limbs after a hot bowl of porridge, a temporary victory against the encroaching chill. The importance of dairy products extended beyond mere calories. Milk, butter, and cheese provided essential vitamins and minerals, particularly calcium and fat-soluble vitamins, which were crucial for maintaining health during a period of limited fresh food. They helped to balance a diet that was otherwise heavily reliant on dried fish and meat, preventing deficiency diseases that could cripple a community. It was a nutritional powerhouse, disguised as simple farm products. You think about the physical demands of Viking life, even in winter, chopping wood, tending livestock, mending tools, and maintaining the longhouse all required significant physical exertion. The preserved diet, though often unappetizing, provided the raw energy needed for these tasks. It was a testament to the efficiency of their food preservation methods that they could sustain such physically demanding lives on what was essentially a survival diet. You might joke, my ancestors were basically eating protein bars and doing CrossFit all winter. And you wouldn't be far off. Food was also a tool for diplomacy and alliance building. When chieftains met to discuss matters of war or peace, the sharing of food and drink was an essential part of the negotiations. A generous host, providing ample and varied provisions, could build trust and demonstrate his commitment to the alliance. Conversely, a stingy host might signal weakness or distrust. Every shared meal was a subtle negotiation, a silent language spoken through the clinking of drinking horns and the tearing of dried meat. The psychological impact of the long, dark winter and the monotonous diet shouldn't be underestimated. The lack of fresh food, the endless gray skies, and the constant struggle for warmth could lead to a sense of weariness, a longing for the vibrant colors and flavors of spring. The communal meals, the storytelling, and the shared labor helped to combat this, providing mental and emotional sustenance alongside the physical. You think about the cycle of the seasons, the way life in the longhouse revolved around the rhythm of the land and the animals. Spring brought new calves and lambs, and with them, the fresh flush of milk. Summer was a time of abundance, when the animals grazed freely and the milk flowed freely. Autumn was the time for processing and preserving, for transforming the perishable into the enduring. And winter was the time for consumption, for relying on the fruits of your labor, for drawing sustenance from the carefully hoarded stores. Your body, however, was remarkably adaptive. Over generations, Vikings developed a resilience to the harsh conditions and the unique diet. Their strong constitutions, honed by a life of physical labor and exposure to the elements, allowed them to tolerate foods that would make a modern person ill. Their gut microbiomes, shaped by centuries of consuming fermented foods, were likely robust and efficient at extracting nutrients from their limited diet. The quiet hum of the longhouse at night is punctuated by the occasional lowing of a cow from the byre, a comforting sound that reminds you of the living, breathing source of your winter sustenance. You feel a deep connection to these animals, a sense of gratitude for their contribution to your survival. They are not just livestock, they are partners in your struggle against the elements. You feel a quiet strength in your own body, a deep-seated resilience that comes from living in harmony with the cycles of nature. You've learned to appreciate the subtle flavors of dried fish, the comforting warmth of oat porridge, the tangy bite of aged cheese. These aren't just foods, they are the building blocks of your endurance, the silent partners in your survival. You reach for a piece of hard cheese, breaking it off with your fingers. It's firm, almost waxy, but as you chew, its rich, savory flavor fills your mouth. It's a taste of the pastures, of the sun-drenched days of summer, concentrated into a small, powerful package. You savor each bite, knowing that this humble piece of cheese represents countless hours of labor, the collective effort of your family and community, all dedicated to the singular goal of enduring the winter. The knowledge of which foods provided what benefits, even without a scientific understanding of vitamins and minerals, was crucial. They knew that certain foods, like fish liver, were particularly fortifying, or that berries, even dried, helped to keep them healthy. This empirical knowledge, passed down through generations, was a form of ancient nutritional science, born of observation and necessity. The knowledge of how to preserve dairy was not just practical, it was a cultural cornerstone. It was passed down from mother to daughter, from generation to generation, a vital part of the oral tradition. Recipes and techniques were refined over centuries, adapting to local conditions and available resources. It was a testament to the collective wisdom of the Viking people, their ability to innovate and adapt in the face of relentless natural challenges. As the winter begins its slow retreat, you feel a subtle shift in the air, a faint promise of the coming spring. Your body, though tired, has endured. The preserved foods, those nasty, wonderful, life-sustaining provisions, have done their job. You are a testament to the Viking spirit of adaptation, a living example of how human ingenuity can overcome even the most formidable challenges. As you drift off to sleep, the faint scent of cheese and butter lingers in the air, a comforting aroma that speaks of resilience and resourcefulness. You are nourished by the bounty of the land, transformed and preserved by ancient hands. The milk, butter, and cheese are more than just food. They are a legacy, a testament to the enduring spirit of the Vikings. You sleep soundly, knowing that your ancestors' wisdom continues to sustain you through the long, dark winter. You close your eyes, the warmth of the longhouse fire a gentle comfort. You have faced the winter, and you have survived. Thanks to the resilience of your body and the ancient wisdom of your people, you drift off to sleep, knowing that the long, dark season is drawing to a close, and the promise of fresh food and renewed vitality is just on the horizon. The longhouse, though warm with the central fire, still feels like a sanctuary against the unforgiving world outside. You've learned about the fish, the meat, and the dairy. But the Viking diet wasn't solely reliant on animal products. As the seasons turned, your ancestors also looked to the land itself, harvesting and meticulously storing the plant-based bounty that nature grudgingly offered. This is the story of foraging and storage, of how berries, roots, and grains, seemingly ephemeral, were transformed into vital winter provisions. The long, dark winter is finally beginning its slow, hesitant retreat. You feel a subtle shift in the air, a faint promise of the coming spring. But the lessons of survival, etched into your very being, will endure long after the last snow melts. You've journeyed through the Viking winter, understanding the ingenuity, the resilience, and the sheer grit required to survive on a diet of preserved foods. Now, let's reflect on the enduring legacy of these ancient foodways, how their echoes resonate even in our modern world, and the silent testament they offer to human adaptability. Imagine the fleeting warmth of late summer and early autumn, a time of frantic activity in the forests and fields. you'd join the women and children, baskets woven from birch bark slung over your shoulders, venturing into the wild. The air would be alive with the buzz of insects and the rustle of leaves, a stark contrast to the silent, frozen landscape you now inhabit. Your eyes would scan the undergrowth, seeking out the vibrant splashes of color, the deep crimson of lingonberries, the dark purple of blueberries, the tart red of cranberries. These weren't just treats, they were concentrated bursts of vitamins and energy, crucial for warding off the insidious diseases of winter. Imagine looking back from the vantage point of spring, the fields slowly emerging from their icy slumber, a faint green blush appearing on the trees. The hunger for fresh food is almost a physical ache, a craving for the vibrant tastes and textures that have been absent for so long. But the memory of the preserved foods, the fermented fish, the dried meat, the aged cheese, the stored grains, it's not one of revulsion, but of profound gratitude. These were the anchors that held you fast through the storm, the silent heroes of your winter tale. But how do you preserve something as delicate as a berry without refrigeration? The Vikings had several clever methods. Some berries would be dried, spread out on mats in the sun or near the gentle warmth of the hearth, slowly shriveling into concentrated nuggets of flavor. Others might be mixed with animal fat or honey, if available, to create a kind of energy paste, a primitive fruit bar. You can almost taste the tart sweetness, a welcome counterpoint to the salty, savory preserved meats? You might think, this is better than the fermented fish. At least, and you'd be absolutely right. A common historical fact is that many of the food preservation techniques developed by the Vikings and other ancient cultures, drying, salting, smoking, and fermentation, are still used today, albeit with modern refinements. Think of smoked salmon, cured meats, aged cheeses, and even fermented vegetables like sauerkraut or kimchi. While our refrigerators and freezers have made these methods less essential for daily survival, the fundamental principles remain a testament to the timeless effectiveness of these ancient practices. You might think, so my fancy charcuterie board is basically Viking survival food. Yes, it is. A common historical fact is that the Viking diet, while often depicted as heavy in meat and fish, also included a significant amount of plant-based foods, especially grains. Barley and oats were commonly cultivated, providing the essential carbohydrates that fueled their strenuous lives. These grains were ground into flour for bread or porridge, forming the caloric backbone of their daily meals. Without these cultivated crops, surviving the long winter would have been immeasurably harder. For a unique detail, did you know that the traditional Norwegian lutefisk, a dish made from aged stockfish, dried cod, or ling that is rehydrated in lye, is a direct culinary descendant of Viking-era stockfish? While the lye preparation is a later addition, the core ingredient and the necessity of its preservation hark back to the Norse tradition of drying fish for long-term storage. Imagine a dish that has literally survived for over 1,000 years, evolving slightly but retaining its ancient roots. It's like finding a recipe from your great-great-great-great-grandparent that still tastes, well, unique. For a unique detail, did you know that some Viking communities would store root vegetables and certain berries in underground pits or cellars, often lined with straw or sand? These natural root cellars maintained a consistently cool, stable temperature and humidity, preventing spoilage and allowing vegetables like turnips, carrots, and parsnips, if cultivated or foraged, to last well into the winter. Imagine digging down into the frozen earth to retrieve a crisp, earthy root, a small miracle of freshness in the heart of winter. It's like having a secret underground pantry, only without the fancy lighting. Academically, the historians still debate the precise extent to which Viking foodways directly influenced the culinary traditions of the lands they raided or settled, versus the independent development of similar preservation methods in those regions. While there's clear evidence of cultural exchange, pinpointing direct culinary lineage can be challenging. Did the Irish learn to smoke salmon from the Norse? Or did they develop similar techniques independently? You can almost hear the academic arguments, the archaeological evidence points to parallel development. But the linguistic similarities in food terms are too strong to ignore. It's a debate that leaves a lingering flavor of uncertainty, academically. Historians still debate the precise extent to which wild root vegetables contributed to the Viking winter diet, particularly in different geographical regions. While archaeological evidence confirms the presence of cultivated grains and some berries, the systematic foraging and long-term storage of wild roots is harder to pinpoint definitively. Was it a consistent and reliable food source, or more of an opportunistic supplement when other provisions ran low? You can almost hear the academic arguments. But the soil conditions weren't ideal for large-scale root storage. But the necessity would have driven innovation. It's a debate that digs deep into the earth of history. The legacy of Viking food preservation isn't just about the techniques themselves. It's about the mindset they fostered. It was a mindset of foresight, of resourcefulness, of deep respect for the natural world and its cycles. Every autumn was a frantic race against time, a collective effort to harness the fleeting abundance of summer and autumn and transform it into a shield against the coming cold. This ingrained habit of planning and preparing, of making do with what was available, shaped not just their diet but their entire way of life. Beyond berries, the Vikings also relied on foraged roots and wild greens, especially in the early and late parts of winter when the ground wasn't completely frozen. These might include wild parsnips, burdock roots, or even certain types of seaweed from the coastline. While not as calorically dense as meat or grains, they provided crucial vitamins and minerals, acting as a natural defense against scurvy and other deficiency diseases. You'd learn from your elders which plants were safe to eat, which were poisonous, and where to find them, even under a thin layer of snow. It was a dangerous game of botanical roulette, but a necessary one. You remember the feeling of collective effort, the entire longhouse working together to process the harvest, the women salting fish, the men tending the smokehouse, the children gathering berries. It was a symphony of labor, each person playing a vital role in the community's survival. This communal spirit, born of shared necessity, was as crucial as any preservation method. It taught you that survival was not an individual endeavor, but a collective triumph. The most substantial plant-based contribution to the winter diet came from cultivated grains, barley, and oats. These were harvested in late summer, threshed, and then carefully stored. Grain storage was critical. Large, watertight wooden bins or woven baskets, often elevated to protect against rodents and dampness, would be filled with the precious kernels. Some communities might have even used underground granaries, carefully lined to keep the grain dry and cool. The goal was to prevent moisture, which would lead to mold and spoilage. The very act of consuming these preserved foods, day after day, instilled a deep appreciation for sustenance. There was no waste. Every scrap, every bone, every last berry was utilized. The Vikings were masters of efficiency, understanding that in a world of scarcity, every calorie was precious. This frugality, born of harsh necessity, is a stark contrast to the abundance and wastefulness of modern society. You might think, my ancestors would be horrified by my leftovers, and you'd probably be right. Probably. You remember the rhythmic sound of the grinding stone, a constant presence in the longhouse during winter. Grain would be hand-milled into coarse flour, a laborious task that often fell to the women and children. This flour would then be used to make flatbreads, cooked on a griddle over the fire, or thick, hearty porridges. These were the staple foods, the comforting, filling meals that provided sustained energy for daily tasks and warmth in the bitter cold. You might not have had a fancy sourdough starter, but you had sustenance. The knowledge of these preservation methods wasn't written down in cookbooks. It was embedded in the oral traditions, in the muscle memory of generations. It was learned by doing, by watching, by participating in the annual rituals of preparing for winter. This practical, experiential knowledge was their true wealth, a living library of survival techniques passed down from elder to child. The importance of these plant-based foods cannot be overstated. While meat and fish provided protein and fat, grains offered the necessary carbohydrates for energy, and berries and roots supplied essential micronutrients. It was a balanced, albeit often monotonous, diet that allowed them to survive. You'd chew on a piece of hard, dry flatbread, its earthy taste a testament to the grain fields of summer, and feel the slow release of energy into your body. As the days grow longer and the sun's warmth finally begins to penetrate the frozen earth, you feel a renewed sense of vitality. The cravings for fresh greens and succulent game intensify. a biological imperative signaling the end of the lean season. But you also carry with you the quiet confidence that comes from having endured. You have faced the winter, and you have survived, thanks to the ingenuity of your ancestors and the enduring power of their preserved foods. You think about the ingenuity involved in protecting these stores from pests? Rats and mice were a constant threat, capable of devouring an entire winter's supply if left unchecked. Cats, if available, would be highly valued, and careful construction of storage areas, with tight-fitting lids and elevated platforms, was paramount. It was a constant battle against the forces of nature, a silent war waged against hungry creatures. You can almost hear a Viking complaining. My grain supply is under attack, send in the feline reinforcements. The story of how Vikings survived winter on nasty preserved foods is more than just a historical anecdote. It's a powerful reminder of human adaptability. It shows us that even in the most challenging environments, with limited technology, our ancestors found ways not just to exist, but to build thriving societies. Their methods, born of necessity, forged a path for future generations, leaving a legacy of resilience that continues to inspire. The knowledge of foraging and plant identification was passed down through generations, a vital part of the oral tradition. Your grandmother would tell you stories of the best berry patches, the hidden groves where roots grew thick and plentiful. She'd teach you how to identify plants by their leaves, their flowers, even their bare stems in winter. This wasn't just folklore, it was practical, life-saving knowledge, ensuring that every available resource was utilized. You close your eyes, the image of the longhouse fading, replaced by the gentle hum of your own world. The faint scent of ancient smoke and salt lingers, a whisper from the past. You are connected to those who came before you, their struggles and triumphs echoing in the quiet moments of your own life. As the winter winds howl outside, you find comfort in the simple, earthy taste of a bowl of oat porridge made from the grains harvested months ago. It's warm, filling, and provides a steady source of energy. You watch the steam rise, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke, and feel a deep sense of connection to the land that sustains you.